Okay, hello, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for joining this conference today, this webinar. So we welcome you. We are the Asociación Colombiana de Profesores de Inglés. Can you hear me well? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so before information that I would like to share with you. So, okay, so we want to invite you. This is a kind invitation for our colleagues of experiences in their research projects with us. We want to invite you to our annual conference this year. So we want to our conference will be on October the 1st, from October the 1st to October the 3rd. And your proposals. We are now receiving the papers, so we strongly invite you to us on Instagram and as a copy official, and also follow us on want to invite our professor, our guest today. Welcome, Professor Laura. Introduction about Professor Laura. Okay, we have more. Sorry. Laura is a language teacher, educator, and researcher with over 10 years of experience in higher education in Colombia. She holds Nacional and a bachelor degree in language education from Universidad Sur Colombiana. Her work critically examines taking for granted assumptions in language education, with particular interest in translanguaging as a hierarchical seeks to foster more contextualized, dialogic, and critically aware approaches to language learning in Colombia and Global South context. So thank you very much for joining us. And Professor Laura, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Before we start, I just want to check if you guys can hear me just fine and see me just fine. Good? Okay. Because I feel that, I don't know if it was me or it was Wendy maybe had some connection issues, but it's fine. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this session. I am very excited. It's an honor to be here and share with you my experience regarding this topic. And thank you, of course, to Asocopi for having me today. Let me just set this. There you go. Well, today I want to talk about more than just let's say, let me share. There you go. Okay. Can you guys see my screen now? I think you do. Perfect. Thank you. So today I want to talk about, or the topic of this presentation is designing for translanguaging, affect ungrading and classroom power in a Colombian language center. More than anything, I would like to share with you today the experience I've had in the last year regarding a very specific model in language learning, language education, and to answer some questions and maybe give you some support, some strategies that you guys can use in your own contexts. But before we start, I would like to do a very simple exercise with you. So, very small experiment. I would like, please, can you answer this question? It can be in the chat box if you can. Wie geht es dir, wenn du eine Sprache nicht gut sprichst? If you can answer this question, please go ahead and do so in the chat box. I'm going to give you 30 seconds perhaps for that. Okay, is anybody having issues, problems with this question? Feel free to talk if you want to, don't worry. All right, so as you noticed, just very quick question, does anybody recognize the language in which this question is written? Sandro, thank you very much. This is German. Not Maritza, sorry, I have no idea about German. Well, don't worry, it happens. I am just an emergent bilingual in German, not my area of expertise. But this is just a very simple experiment that maybe today you are the main participants in it, but I want you to think about your own students. When you walked into the classroom and you start giving instructions, asking questions, and promoting the use of English as the only language in your classroom, maybe the feelings that you felt just a couple of minutes ago when I asked you to answer this question, those feelings that might not be precisely very positive are the feelings that your students feel every single day during your English lesson. And that is precisely what I want to talk about today, because there is a shared tension in language teaching. Perhaps and throughout the I don't know, maybe the last decade, let's say, there's been a strong discourse about the use of language, of the native language, in the EFL the EFL classroom, or the language, the foreign language, in the foreign language process. And the thing is that we teachers support that. We now understand that there are some benefits, some advantages that we can consider when we encourage our students to use their full linguistic repertoire, right, in order to improve their communication. That we know. However, despite the good intentions that we may have, in the classroom, we consciously or unconsciously, we tend to make our classroom an English-only environment. We tend to do something, as you can see on your screen, to maybe have like a strict or a strong focus on the correctness of the use of language, and sometimes our evaluation is based only on the performance that our students have in that specific target language, that in most of the cases I think that for us will be English. And this, what's the consequence of this? It's actually, I don't think this is rocket science for anyone, but our students suffer from anxiety. They are quiet. They tend not to participate a lot in class, and therefore the language development or the communicative objective that we aimed to accomplish with them is not close to be a successful process. So all of this tension, right, All of this tension has led me to, right, there you go. All of this tension has led me to work in different contexts, but specifically for this experience, I'm going to talk about some students in a language center from a private university in Bogota, the implementation of everything I'm going to talk about and all the results and possible answers to the questions have to do with work that I've been doing with over 30, 39, 40 students in the last year. And these groups being so diverse, because I had from 17 years old to 60 years old, people with good, bad experiences in language learning. This diversity was very fun, but at the same time, it allows it, it it creates a lot of tensions. It creates a lot of questions, and considering that most of them have what we call the good a good English level, or well, we don't, but they do consider to have a good English level teacher, or some of them were closer to me defiendo teacher and something like that. A lot of questions emerged, but one of the main questions that I had to deal with was what happens when translanguaging becomes part of the learning environment design rather than an incidental practice. Um, so, in this context specifically, right, we started working on translanguaging, so pedagogical design, specifically because we wanted to integrate it in our designs. It's not about just explaining things in Spanish. It's not about only having the occasional strategy to speak in Spanish to create meaning, but it was decided to include it and implement it in our curriculum consciously and with the specific purposes. And that is one of the first things that you teachers, if you are ever thinking about implementing translanguaging, is every single time that you're going to use Spanish, there must be a clear purpose so you don't lose the aim, which is language learning through the native language of your students. Doing that, integrating translanguaging in the curriculum allows us to have, number two, to legitimate meaning making. So students already have a full linguistic repertoire in Spanish, right, that they can use, that they are more than competent in using. And sometimes you want to ignore it, but not in this case. What we look for here is to understand and to help them use it without feeling guilty about it. Why is this? Because if you think about it, and this is also a moment to reflect a little bit on the things that we do in the classroom. Sometimes, and even when we were students and we were learning, we were told the more you are in contact with English, the more you're going to learn. So try to think in English, speak in English, think. Even if you're able to dream, to have dreams in English, maybe that means that you are bilingual. So it's a good thing to implement it in the curriculum, but it's also a way to legitimate the students' repertoire, linguistic repertoire, and to help them understand that the use of it is not something that is wrong, is not something that can maybe has negative consequences in their learning process. On the contrary, we aimed for them to have an extended practice, right? Learning extends beyond the classroom, encouraging students to actively use and connect the diverse languages in real world contexts. When we deal with Spanish and English in the classroom, those last three words, real world contexts, it comes to life, because then students are able to explore their own context, their own identity, and we do that also through the use of English and Spanish in the classroom. However, the use of Spanish, in this case, in the classroom, or the implementation of translanguaging, doesn't mean that this experience is going to be successful. Not at all. We are complex human beings. So, as we were going, right, we discovered something very important, and is that there were some conditions that still affecting the learning process. Not because the students were able to speak in Spanish, they felt more confident. Not really. It didn't happen. Not because of not because they were allowed to speak in Spanish, they felt less frustrated in certain moments, right? There were still some specific situations, conditions in the classroom that didn't allow them to feel completely free to make a good use of the language. And some of the conditions that we identified were ungrading. Better than ungrading, the fact that they feel a lot of pressure when they're going to be graded and evaluated. Um, then everything related to the emotional well-being was another condition very important for us to deal with in order to improve and to help our students have a successful learning process. So, to go against grading, we have ungrading, of course, the removal of traditional numerical evaluation systems. Instead of giving them numeric grades, we opted for instant feedback. We opted for specific moments of reflection about their own processes and past experiences in the learning process, in the language learning process. Um, Evaluation, peer evaluation, and everything that is not a number, basically. And it helped. It helped a lot. Students felt a lot less pressure. It takes time. Trust me, it's been a year, and there are still a lot of students who are thinking about, okay, but am I going to fail? Am I going to pass? Is this going to give me a good, not a good number, but a good comment on the teacher? It takes time, and it's kind of like an identity thing when you're a student and when you're a teacher, because this is not only about students. It takes time, but the ungrading help us to remove some specific and traditional, not only situations in the classroom, but also a specific, let's say, state of mind, right? And very rigid structures in the students' and teachers' perceptions about what it means to be evaluated and what it means um, to have a good feedback or a good understanding of the learning process. The second condition was the attention to effects. I don't really need to explain this too much, because we all know by now. By now, we all know that the emotional dimension is crucial in the learning process. And it was very interesting to see how, when you say to a student, "Don't worry, you can make mistakes," or, for example, "Tell me about your past experiences. What happened? Why is it that you don't like English?" When we allowed our students to have these moments of reflection and thinking about their past experiences, their frustration, their anxiety, the roots for all of these negative feelings about towards English, towards learning a language specifically, we were able to prioritize the emotional part, and we were able to then give them specific strategies to deal with that in the classroom during the sessions, allowing them to feel safe to feel like it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to not know a word and to not know an expression. Let's build knowledge and meaning together. And the last condition is frustration management. And this is very interesting because frustration, different from anxiety, causes a lot of what we called, or what students called, or mentioned, no, teacher, yo me bloqueo, me quedo en blanco, no sé qué hacer, no, no me da de todo, me desmayo, me falta el aire, me pongo pálido. That frustration about not knowing a word and actually thinking that they are not good enough because they don't remember one expression, one specific structure, uh, led us to think, okay, we need to deal with this. So reducing and decreasing the frustration in our students was a very interesting process that it is still happening. You know, it's as it says there, a negotiation, because remember, it takes time. The ungrading takes time, the attention to effect takes time, the frustration management takes time, and it's a negotiation about what they want to do, how they feel, and you as teacher, how can you support them in order to feel better. So these classroom dynamics, the ungrading, the attention to effect, the frustration management, and the translanguaging, they all connected in order to allow students to have a clear view of what the learning process might um, uh, look like for them. So very simple to summarize a little bit of these key points. And grading in practice, I'm going to start over here, is not only about reducing or removing, maybe better, numbers, but it's about reducing the pressure for students. They sometimes don't care about anything else but the number, right? When you reduce the pressure and they know that it's not a matter of failing or passing, they actually feel more confident about doing what they can, getting the feedback they need, and improving. This is about also experimentation, greater willingness to try out language, make mistakes, and explore new communicative strategies. It's funny because actually I realized that very close related to the collaborative building of knowledge, students tend to collaborate more. They don't feel like competitors in a never-ending race. So sometimes with some activities, when I ask a student to do or work in any activity, and they were blocked, as they said, some of the classmates were like, maybe what you mean is this, and maybe in English or Spanish. No, yo creo que se dice así, ¿cierto, profe? No, 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 the word is X or Y. And they started to do experiments and to do collaborative learning in the classroom without the teacher actually encouraging directly, let's say. Um, and more importantly, again, the feedback focused. Evaluation, it's one of the most difficult parts of the learning, of the language learning process, but I do believe that when we don't focus or let our students focus on the grades only, they have a lot more room to improve, to grow, and to allow themselves to feel like some freedom in terms of using the language without having so much fear of making a mistake. Um, this is very important because the affect and frustration, as I mentioned before, this is about everything related to the emotions and how you deal with that, with the anxiety, with the fear, with the sadness, with the happiness sometimes, especially in language learning when you're not able to express yourself, right? not if you're sad or happy or if you're angry. It causes a lot of issues and a lot of negative situations and perceptions about the language learning process. Mm, so I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy for you as a teacher to compete, to well, not to compete, but to deal with these situations. Um, but it's so important, you know. Um, I remember in some of the courses I had last year, one student at the very beginning um, was very shy, didn't talk much, but she participated. She was coming to the sessions. It was good. I talked to her, and like, let's say, like 6 weeks into the course, she sent me an email, and she was like, "Teacher, thank you very much. This is such a relief to find a place where I can make mistakes. Like I'm literally quoting her, where I can, a place where I can make mistakes, where I feel safe, and where I know that I can ask for help in English, in Spanish, and that I am going to get it." So it's not easy, but when there are moments of hesitation, of insecurity, when they forget what they want to say, when they don't know what they want to say, all of that is not only related to language, it causes, I say, wounds, right, within them. And if we don't deal with them, it's very difficult to move on from them and to avoid those wounds to become deeper and deeper and more difficult to heal and to deal with. The material had a lot to do with this. Um, in this experience that I'm talking about, we only use authentic material, and all of it was based on the students' likes and interests. Everything they wanted to do with it, everything they were interested in, we checked. So, one very good way to deal with the emotions, with affect and frustration is give the students what they really need and what they really want. Keep the balance. You, as the professor, as the teacher, you know what they need. You know what they should cover in this course, in this period. Um, but give them what they want. Ask the question. It's gonna be a lot easier if you just work based on what they tell you. Trust me, it's gonna be a lot easier. Um, so, okay, so after all of this months of experimenting with translanguaging, I came to realize that there are some strategies that you guys can include in your lessons and in your planning. The first one is normalize language mixing. From the very beginning, validate it. For me, it's very important for students to realize that the use of Spanish doesn't happen because they don't know English. Be careful with this. They can use Spanish because they are native speakers of Spanish, and they are learning a different language, and it's like a trampoline, it's the means to an end. But I don't use Spanish because I am dumb, because I don't know English, because my classmate, he, she can, I can't. Normalize it. Spanish is part of their identity. Spanish is part of who they are. The vision of their world comes from Spanish. So it's not a bad thing, it's not negative. And we should normalize it from the very beginning and make them understand that speaking another language, learning another language, can be seen as a privilege, can be seen as a good to overcome other kinds of obstacles, but never as a negative thing. Not the use of Spanish. It's not never going to be a negative thing. Normalize language mixing. Separate communication from evaluation. Focus feedback on the clarity of meaning rather than strict adherence to grammatical correctness, especially in early stages. Communication is not perfect. Never. I trust me, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. And if I watch the recording of this session again, for sure I made a lot of mistakes. And I am a professor at the university. If you think about your own practice, you make mistakes. And I tell my students that all the time. Yes, I'm doing this, I'm the teacher, I'm in this position, this or that. I make mistakes because communication is not perfect. Especially in early stages, this reduces anxiety a lot. If you make mistakes, you're able to correct them. It's part of the process. And since the communication is not perfect, doesn't only rely it doesn't only rely on grammatical correctness. You know, you can make grammatical mistakes. You can correct those grammatical mistakes and learn from them. And if you use Spanish to understand and or to do that, it's completely fine. Design for meaning. I said it at the beginning, but try to make them to generate, try to design activities, try to help students participate in tasks that are going to help them discover the meaning, the actual meaning of the target language. In this experience, particularly, we deal a lot with different when we talk about languages in the classroom, I tend to have a lot of situations in which we discuss the vision of English or the perspective or why is this word, this meaning in English, this meaning in Spanish, what happens there, what's the difference, why do they use it, why do we use it. So when they understand, when they actually work for meaning, for problem solving, allowing them that help them to regulate the difference between both languages, because they start understanding a little bit more about what does it mean to be an English speaker or a speaker of English. It works every time. And of course, prepare for repair. As I said earlier, there are a lot of moments in this experience where students are able to collaboratively create meaning, help each other. And I think it's very interesting that this happens, or in my experience, it happens freely and no pressure in when they are allowed to use Spanish, because it happened at some point when there was a student having issues in communicating an idea, and they were like making, like signs and speaking low and trying to give him the answer that he was looking for. But I was like, it doesn't work like that. I mean, that's not precisely the most the closest to the real situation that happens outside the classroom. So just be ready and encourage them to collaborative understand and create meaning. Translanguaging allows that because they're not going to be, they won't have a barrier, a language barrier that separates them from the task, the meaning of the task, and the actual accomplishment of that task. So what happens? As you know, all of this that I've been sharing with you today, it took place in the language center, right? But I've been moving a little bit towards more formal education at schools or at universities, and I've come to the I mean, not to the full understanding of it. If you look any database and you look for translanguaging implementation, especially in Colombia and things like that, there are very few studies. Not a lot. Not many things are going on right now. It is a very, very interesting topic, getting a lot caught. It's catching more and more attention. A lot of research is coming, I'm pretty sure. But in the experience that I've managed to have in the last couple of years and months, I've come to realize that it's not very different, the implications moving towards formal education. Because translanguaging offers, as it says there, a powerful framework to enhance learning. Yes. Imagine it's just as simple as that. I focus a lot more in the use of English when they are actually completing a task. So sometimes what I do is that I give them instructions in Spanish, easy. I don't put a lot of effort in them understanding the task, but actually doing and completing the task, you know, because when they do, it's when they realize, okay, so the instruction might mean this, you know. So it's just like a back and forth process where they go one step farther, they come back to check, they go two steps farther, they come back to check. But it works like that. So for schools, for universities, is no different, not really. um, Allow students to have discussions, to go for problem solving situations, let them use their native language in the classroom, especially for meaning making, especially for them to go to deeper analysis and understanding of topics, of real life situations. That's going to give them a more meaningful learning process. And remember that if something is meaningful, you're going to remember it, right? That's why the interest, the materials that you use is going to make a lot of more impact is if it is connected to your students' context and needs. And for university, although it might be more difficult, especially the ungrading part for this formal education process, it's also a matter of how you deal with the discourse about it. But other than that, try to integrate it, reflection journals, dynamic discussions, project-based learning, right? Where they can mix different languages and explore specifically complex topics. They feel that when they're learning English, and it's like a very they want to speak, they want to share their ideas in the most complex way possible, the way they will do it in English. And sometimes in early stages that's not possible. So what I try to do is, okay, how would you do it? How would you say it in Spanish? Let's check. Let's transform it. Which word can we use? Which structure can be better than the other? It's an opportunity also to improve, to enhance the communicative, the linguistic knowledge in our native language. If you want this trampoline to work, it needs to be strong so you can jump on it and go farther, higher, farther, you know? So it's basically meaning-oriented learning, promoting intellectual growth over linguistic purity. Um, so getting closer to the end, just want to leave you guys with a final reflection, and is I know that to implement translanguaging, we need to deal with more than just allowing Spanish in the classroom. We need to think about the assessment. We need to think about emotional safety. We need to think about expectations, our students' background and back in past experiences. So considering that, then the question that remains and that I want you to think about after this session is over is what kind of classroom design allows multilingual learning to emerge? What are those changes that I need to implement in my classroom so I can successfully allow my students and and design in order to have Spanish, English, French, I don't know, German in the classroom. Now Korean, because they love K-pop and K-dramas, and they are better at at Korean or Japanese than they are actually to English. So this is the question that I want to leave you guys with. Um, there are a lot of things to do yet. Actually, currently I'm carrying out research about it. Hopefully, we will have more specific answers for this specific context, which is Colombia. But my invitation is for you to try and allow them to think, to use, to express their full identity, to use their full linguistic repertoire, and be systematic, but also try to understand that it takes time. It takes time. Well, these are some of the references, but of course, if you want to know more, if you would like to discuss or to talk about it, you can also email me, contact me. I'll be more than happy to discuss, to have a good talk with you at any point. Well, now I don't know if you guys have any question, any comment, anything that you would like to know about it.
Thank you very much, Professor Laura. I think it was a very inspiring talk, inspiring conference. I think we have some time for questions. Can you hear me well, Professor Laura?
Yes.
And yes,
Anyway,
okay, I think we've got a question from Professor Marce Pantoja. So, Professor.
your microphone is off.
Hello, I'm sorry. So I was saying that we have a question from Professor Marce Pantoja. She was raising her hand.
She's
So,
having troubles, she says on the chat
oh,
box.
yeah,
There is another
okay,
comment
yeah,
from Maritza
yeah,
Sanab.
there's a question. Yeah, she says, I teach sixth grade in a public school, and many of my students have very basic English levels. How can I use translanguaging in my classroom to help them understand the content while still encouraging them to develop their English? That's an interesting question.
Excellent question. Next question, please. Okay. Well, I think that one of the first questions that you need to ask before actually thinking, before thinking about translanguaging, is okay. What is interesting for my students? How can I get to them? And second, how am I going to let them do this? Yes. Translanguaging is not only about using Spanish, as I said, but it's about making more systematic use of it. Yes. So, what are you more interested in? Are you more interested in them understanding your instructions, following your commands, or do you want them to actually being able to use English in a more freely way, let's say? So once you have the answers to those questions, my first piece of advice will be, um, make it clear that they can use it. Yes, but it's not only Spanish just because. There are specific purposes and there are specific moments in which they can use it, especially if after that they are able to confirm the understanding in English. What do I mean? For example, you're explaining a topic, right? They are talking, they are doing an exercise, it's good, okay, they're doing what they can with what you're giving them, good. But at some point, they have a question. So that for me will be a moment in which I allow my students to use Spanish. Teacher, I have a question. Cuando me ¿Cómo así, profe, que se le tiene que agregar ese a este verbo? Si es que este verbo yo lo uso así, entonces es con she, con he, con it, pero okay, explain them, make sure that they can do it, they can understand, that you give them all the tools they need to understand what they need to understand. But at the end, they need to be able to, okay, you understood? Yes, teacher. Clear. Okay, so what can we do? What can we use it for? Let's try. Let's have a discussion. Let's do this exercise. Help me solving this problem. You know, and that immediate use of Spanish, use of English after the explanation came, that is going to solve a lot of issues in the gap between I using only Spanish just because, and I'm actually using Spanish so they can correct, improve, and use English. Um, that is one of the ways. The other way is try to focus your efforts in English when they are doing like the output, when the output is the main focus. Um, Understanding comes a lot from your native language, you know. Understanding the reading, understanding, even listening, comes a lot from the native language. So when we are in the input skills, I allow them, or I have the discussion with them, and they're able to make sense of things using Spanish, asking questions in Spanish to me, between them, with the classmate. Um, and once they have to produce, it's a lot easier because now they understood. You know, it's very difficult to produce like the exercise at the beginning. If I don't understand the question, what do you expect me to do, teacher? I can't do anything. So the division between skills, that it also works, but mostly just try to think in specific moments to use Spanish and specific moments to use English, and let them know. That way, they will go back and forth between languages, and that use of the full linguistic repertoire is going to make connections in their brain. So they are able to speak English when they're supposed to, and Spanish when they need to. Which could be it's like the closer answer I can give right now.
Thank you, Professor Laura. I think we have time for another question. Um, okay, we have a comment from Professor John in the chat. He says, thank you, Professor Laura. Interesting and very informative session you have delivered today. Translanguaging is an extremely trending topic today. Love your accurate pronunciation too. Blessings from Asheville, US. And we have another question. I think we can finish with this question, Professor Laura. And it says, within the context of institutions, particularly private ones, there are sometimes requirements such as English-only policies or specific guidelines on how teaching should be approached. While implementing this practice, have you encountered any institutional limitations?
Yes, many. Not specifically in the language center, as the model was created for the language center. But for example, some students were needed. They requested a numerical grade at the end of the course because they needed to take it to their jobs to like a support thing. They were like on a scholarship, so they needed the grade to prove that they were, like doing great in the course. And that is only one of the things. But when we talk, as I mentioned it a little bit, but in the formal context, when you have to actually, like at the end of the semester, have a numerical grade, for example, it's a lot more difficult, especially because this, like the academy, is very strict with rules. Um, but I try to do it anyway. It's like kind of it's not the main focus or the only focus that I have, but I try to implement it in certain activities. I try to use it for specific topics, and the invitation is also that, the more research we do, as John Jaramillo was doing. This is an extremely trending topic today. So the invitation is, let's do research about it. Let's learn a little bit more about it. And that way, I think it's going to be more and more easy. It's going to be more easily to go against the institutional limitations that we might face. But to be honest with you, I think the most difficult part hasn't been the institutional limitations, but the students and teachers' limitations. When you think about no grades, so what do we do? When I ask, "What do you like?" I don't know. I don't know what I like. Do you know? Let's use Spanish, and sometimes even in Spanish, expressing ideas is complex, because not because of the language, but just because of the cognitive development, the ideas that we want to talk about. So institutional, maybe when we try to change at some point, I'm pretty sure that we will try to change policies and the vision of the language learning process. But for now, it's more like an awareness process that we should focus a little bit more, I think, for now.
Okay, thank you, Professor Laura. So I think those are the questions we have so far, but Professor Laura also shared her email that is here, that she's showing us. In case you have questions, you can text her and she'll be happy to answer your questions. So thank you very much, Professor Laura, for being here with us. And we invite you to join us in the next webinars that we will have every month. So thank you very much for being here and see you in the next webinars.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Bye bye.